In a high-end restaurant filled with the soft glow of chandeliers, the air is tense, thick with the sound of clinking glasses and quiet chatter. A Japanese billionaire sits at a table, surrounded by wealth and opulence, a glass of wine held delicately between her fingers. Her eyes scan the room, but something is off. As she brings the glass to her lips, a young waitress, small and determined, stands in front of her. With urgency, the waitress calls out, "Stop! Don't drink it!" She switched the glass. The words pierce through the room, and the bustling restaurant falls into stunned silence. The billionaire freezes, her eyes wide with shock as she slowly lowers the glass. The waitress stands firm, her posture tense yet resolute, standing in stark contrast to the luxurious surroundings. The sound of her voice echoes in the room, the stillness hanging like a heavy fog. Her gaze locks with the billionaire's, and in that moment, something shifts. The power dynamics of the room have changed. The guests, once oblivious to the subtle tension, now look on, curiosity and disbelief written on their faces. The billionaire, her world momentarily disrupted, watches the waitress carefully, the weight of the situation settling in. She doesn't understand how this young woman knew, but she feels an unspoken understanding. The room holds its breath, waiting for the next move, the next revelation. The waitress's eyes remain steady, and in that single moment, she has captured not only the attention but the respect of everyone present. The silence in the restaurant was deafening. Every guest, every waiter, every person in the room was frozen in place, eyes glued to the young waitress standing at the center, her words still echoing in the air. The Japanese billionaire, still gripping the glass she had been about to drink from, stared at the waitress in disbelief. A deep tension hung in the air, as the atmosphere shifted from one of casual luxury to something far more charged. Slowly, the billionaire set the glass down on the table, her fingers trembling slightly, not from fear, but from the unexpected turn of events. She had been so certain, so comfortable, but now, her mind raced with questions. How had the young waitress known? What was it that made her so sure? The rest of the room, still in shock, seemed to exhale at the same time, though. The silence remained heavy. The young waitress, no older than 17, stood her ground, her expression unwavering. The people around her were unsure of what to do or say next. The billionaire looked at her with a mixture of confusion and curiosity. "How did you know?" she asked quietly, her voice trembling ever so slightly, but her eyes were intense, demanding an answer. The waitress, still calm, met her gaze without hesitation. "I saw the server bring in the wrong glass," she said simply, her voice firm but not without compassion. "And I saw the way she glanced at you, like she was waiting for something to happen." There was no pride in her voice, no attempt to claim a victory. She was simply stating the facts, as she saw them. The billionaire's brow furrowed, a complex mix of emotions flickering across her face. She had been on guard her entire life, surrounded by people who were eager to take advantage of her, to manipulate her, but something about this young girl, this waitress, felt different. The room felt smaller now, the wealth and luxury around them fading into the background as the two women locked eyes. It was as if the vast disparity between their worlds no longer mattered. For a brief moment, the billionaire felt vulnerable. She was used to being in control, used to being the one who had all the answers, but in this moment, she was the one who had to ask. The waitress, still standing, seemed to sense the shift in the air. She took a deep breath, the tension in her shoulders relaxing just a little. "It's not about being special," she added, "it's about paying attention." The billionaire blinked, taken aback by the simplicity of the answer. She had expected something more elaborate, some hidden trick or elaborate scheme, but it was nothing like that. This girl, this waitress, had simply been observant. She had seen what others had overlooked. The billionaire's gaze softened, and for the first time in what felt like a long time, she smiled, genuinely. "You're not just a waitress, are you?" she asked, her voice quieter now, tinged with a new sense of respect. The waitress, still standing tall, gave a small shake of her head. "No, ma'am. I'm just someone who sees things." There was a moment of silence between them, a recognition of sorts, as the billionaire processed the girl's words. She had always thought of herself as someone who saw through the facades of others, someone who could read people like books. But now, in this unexpected encounter, she realized that sometimes, the truth wasn't hidden behind a smile or a clever turn of phrase. Sometimes, the truth was simply in what you noticed, in the details that others missed. The billionaire leaned back in her chair, still staring at the waitress, her thoughts swirling. The rest of the room had begun to regain some semblance of normalcy, the tension slowly dissipating, but the moment between the two women remained, suspended in time. It was as if they had shared a secret, something unspoken but understood. The waitress, seemingly aware that the conversation was coming to a close, gave a slight nod. "I just did my job," she said quietly, stepping back, but not without one final, lingering glance at the billionaire. The billionaire didn't say anything at first. She simply watched as the waitress moved away, her movements graceful despite the tension that had hung in the air. The waitress was just doing her job, but in doing so, she had shaken something deep within the billionaire. Something had shifted in that brief exchange, and for the first time, the billionaire wondered what else she had been missing all this time. What else had she overlooked in her pursuit of control, in her desire to stay ahead of everyone else? She realized that maybe it wasn't always about being in charge, about having the upper hand. Maybe it was about noticing the things that others didn't, the things that truly mattered. The billionaire sat there for a long moment, her fingers lightly drumming on the edge of the table. The last traces of tension in the room slowly faded as the guests returned to their conversations, but something had changed for her. Her mind kept replaying the waitress's words, "It's about paying attention." She had heard this before from countless people, but this time it felt different. She had been in control for so long, but now, for the first time in a long while, she realized that maybe she had been missing something. The words echoed in her mind as she sat, lost in thought. The waitress had done nothing special, and yet, she had managed to stop the billionaire in her tracks. She had noticed something that no one else had, and it had saved her from making a terrible mistake. The billionaire's thoughts were interrupted by a soft voice. "Excuse me, ma'am?" It was the waitress again. She was standing at the edge of the table, hesitant but firm. The billionaire looked up, surprised to see her standing there. She was no longer just a waitress to her, but a person with something important to say. "Yes?" The billionaire's voice was softer now, more open. The waitress shifted her weight nervously, but she didn't back down. "I just wanted to thank you," she said. "For not getting angry. Most people would have been furious." The billionaire's brow furrowed slightly. "Why would I be angry?" she asked, genuinely puzzled. The waitress hesitated, as if gathering her thoughts before speaking. "Because I just interrupted your dinner. I made a scene. And, well, I'm not really in a position to be making waves around here." There was a brief pause before the billionaire responded. "You did what you thought was right," she said, her tone unexpectedly kind. "And I respect that." The waitress looked at her, stunned. No one had ever spoken to her like that before. Most people, especially in this world of wealth and power, dismissed her without a second thought. But here was someone powerful, who saw her, really saw her. She wasn't just a servant in the background, she wasn't just a face in a crowd. She was a person. The billionaire leaned back in her chair, studying the waitress with a thoughtful expression. "You seem like someone who knows a lot about the world, despite not being part of it," she said quietly. The waitress's gaze dropped for a moment, but she didn't shy away from the comment. "I've learned a lot over the years," she said softly. "Life doesn't give you much, but it teaches you to pay attention to the small things." The billionaire smiled, a genuine, almost wistful smile. "You know, I've spent my life being surrounded by the best of everything. Money, power, luxury. But the more I've had, the more I realize I've lost sight of the things that actually matter." The waitress nodded slowly, her eyes meeting the billionaire's with understanding. "It's easy to forget. It's easy to get caught up in all the noise and the chaos. But sometimes, the most important things are the things we don't see until they're right in front of us." The billionaire studied her for a long moment. There was something about this girl, her maturity, her quiet strength, that made her pause and reconsider everything she had built her life around. The waitress had never asked for anything, never sought anything beyond her job, and yet, in this moment, she seemed to possess a kind of wisdom that the billionaire had only just begun to understand. The billionaire stood up from the table, her movements slow and deliberate. "I'd like to offer you something," she said, her voice steady. The waitress looked up, confused. "What do you mean?" she asked. The billionaire's eyes softened, her expression serious. "You're smart. You're observant. You've earned my respect. I'd like to help you. Maybe you could come work for me. Not as a waitress, but in a position where your talents can actually make a difference." The waitress's eyes widened in surprise. She had never expected anything like this. She had never even dreamed of a life outside the restaurant, let alone a life working for someone like this billionaire. "You really think I could do something like that?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. The billionaire nodded. "I believe in giving people opportunities. I've had a lot of them in my life, and I think it's time I started sharing them. But it's your choice. I'm offering you the chance, but the rest is up to you." The waitress stood frozen for a moment, the weight of the offer sinking in. This was more than just a job offer. It was a chance for something more, a chance to step into a world she had only ever observed from the outside, a chance to build a life she had never dared to dream about. But could she take it? Could she leave everything she knew behind? She thought about her family, the people she had taken care of, the life she had built with the little she had. And then, she thought about the billionaire's words, "Sometimes, the most important things are the things we don't see until they're right in front of us." For the first time in a long time, the waitress allowed herself to think about what might be possible. She allowed herself to dream. Slowly, she nodded, her voice steady as she spoke. "I'll take the chance." The billionaire smiled, a sense of satisfaction and hope flickering in her eyes. This moment, this simple exchange, had changed something in both of them. For the billionaire, it was a lesson in humility and perspective. For the waitress, it was a chance at a new beginning, a chance to change the trajectory of her life. And as the two women stood there, a new understanding between them, the rest of the restaurant seemed to fade away, leaving only the quiet promise of what was to come. The next few days passed in a blur for the waitress, whose life seemed to have shifted from one moment to the next. Her routine at the restaurant continued, but something had changed deep within her. She had never expected to receive such an offer, let alone to have her worth recognized by someone so powerful. The billionaire had been kind enough to follow through on her promise. After a brief meeting with her staff, the billionaire had personally arranged for the waitress to start her new position. And here she was, standing outside a towering office building in the heart of the city, the very same building she had only seen from a distance, walking past it every day on her way to work. Now, she was about to step inside. The very idea made her pulse race, but also filled her with an undeniable sense of pride. It was not just the new job that excited her, it was the chance to prove herself in a world she had never dared to dream of entering. As she approached the glass doors, she took a deep breath, reminding herself that this was her opportunity, a gift she had earned. Inside, the building was even more impressive than she had imagined. The polished floors gleamed under the bright lights, and the faint hum of activity echoed through the sleek, modern hallways. She felt small, insignificant in the grand space, but the memory of the billionaire's offer anchored her, a steady force urging her forward. She was greeted by a receptionist who showed her to a small conference room. As she entered, she was met by the billionaire, who stood up from her seat, offering a warm smile. "Welcome," she said. "I'm glad you're here. Please, sit." The waitress felt a flutter of nerves, but she quickly settled into the chair. The billionaire, already seated, leaned forward slightly, her eyes focused and serious. "I know this is all new for you," she said, "and I don't expect you to have all the answers right away. What I want is for you to feel comfortable, to know that you are here because I believe in you." The words were kind, but they carried weight. It wasn't just an offer for a job, it was an offer for a fresh start. "I've been in your shoes," the billionaire continued, her voice soft but firm. "When I first started out, I had no one to guide me. I had to learn everything the hard way. But now I want to change that for someone else." The waitress felt the warmth in the billionaire's words, and for the first time, she felt like she wasn't just a background figure in someone else's story. She was part of something. She was seen. "Thank you," she said, her voice small but genuine. The billionaire smiled again, as if she knew how much those words meant. "I know you'll do well," she said. "But don't feel pressured. Take your time. You'll learn, and we'll learn from you too." Over the next few weeks, the waitress found herself adjusting to her new life. She began to learn the ins and outs of the business, sitting in meetings, discussing strategies, and even offering her own insights, small at first, but growing in confidence as time passed. The billionaire wasn't the type to hover. She trusted her employees to do their work, but she also took the time to check in with the waitress, offering guidance and encouragement when needed. The waitress began to feel like she belonged in this world. It wasn't easy. There were moments when she doubted herself, when the weight of the office and the expectation seemed too much. But the billionaire's words kept her grounded. "You belong here," the billionaire had told her once, and those words became her anchor. One afternoon, as the waitress sat in her office, reviewing documents, a voice interrupted her thoughts. It was the billionaire. "How are you settling in?" she asked, leaning casually against the doorframe. The waitress looked up, surprised but pleased to see her. "I'm doing well," she said, smiling. "I never imagined this for myself, but I'm adjusting. I've learned so much already." The billionaire smiled, a knowing look in her eyes. "You're doing great. I can see it. But don't forget, you still have your unique perspective. That's what makes you valuable here. It's why I brought you in." The waitress nodded, feeling a sense of pride swelling in her chest. She knew she had a lot to learn, but she also knew that she was learning, and that was enough. As the days passed, she grew into her new role. Her confidence blossomed, and the respect she had gained from her colleagues was evident. The once overlooked waitress was now an integral part of the team, contributing ideas that were noticed, respected, and acted upon. The billionaire, always thoughtful and composed, took her under her wing, showing her the ropes of the business world, but also allowing her to make her own decisions, to find her own path. One evening, after another successful presentation, the waitress stood outside the building, taking a moment to reflect on how far she had come. It seemed like only yesterday she had been working in that small, dimly lit restaurant, feeling invisible, unsure of her place in the world. But now, standing outside the towering glass building, she realized that the impossible had happened. She had found a new life, a new purpose. She had stepped into a world she never thought possible, and in doing so, she had discovered something far more valuable than any job or title, her own potential. As the weeks passed, the waitress began to find her rhythm in the office. The transition from her previous life to her new one was not always easy, but each day, she grew more confident in her role. The world that once felt foreign and intimidating now seemed more like home. She had learned to navigate the complexities of the corporate world, and with each new task, her sense of self-worth strengthened. One afternoon, as she sat at her desk, reviewing the figures for the company's upcoming project, she was interrupted by a knock on her office door. It was the billionaire, standing in the doorway with a smile that was both warm and knowing. "May I come in?" she asked. The waitress stood up, quickly clearing a spot on her desk. "Of course," she said, feeling a flutter of nerves. The billionaire entered, taking a seat across from her. "I just wanted to check in and see how you're doing," she said. "How's everything going?" The waitress hesitated for a moment before answering. "I'm doing well," she said, her voice steady. "It's still a lot to take in, but I'm adjusting. I'm learning more every day." The billionaire nodded, her expression thoughtful. "You've made great progress. I'm impressed by how quickly you've adapted to this environment. I know it's not easy to go from working in a restaurant to this," she said, gesturing around the sleek, polished office. "But you've done it with grace." The waitress smiled, feeling a rush of pride at the recognition. "Thank you. I never expected this kind of opportunity. But now that I'm here, I'm giving it my all." The billionaire's gaze softened. "And that's exactly why I wanted to offer you something more." The waitress blinked, not entirely sure what the billionaire meant. "More?" she asked. "What do you mean?" The billionaire leaned forward, her voice lowering slightly. "I want to offer you a chance to lead a project," she said. "It's a big responsibility, but I believe you're ready for it." The waitress's heart skipped a beat. Lead a project, she repeated, feeling a mix of excitement and disbelief. The billionaire nodded. Yes. I want you to take charge of a new initiative we're starting. It's a major project for the company, and I believe you're the perfect person to oversee it. The waitress could hardly believe what she was hearing. She had only just started in the company, and now she was being offered the chance to lead something important? It felt like a dream. I don't know what to say, she said, her voice filled with awe. This is incredible. The billionaire smiled. You don't have to say anything just yet. Take your time to think it over. But I wanted you to know that this is something I truly believe you can do. I've seen how you approach problems, how you think creatively, and how you connect with people. Those are the qualities that make a great leader. The waitress sat back in her chair, her mind racing. This was the opportunity of a lifetime. It was everything she had ever wanted but never thought she could achieve. But with the support of the billionaire, she felt like maybe, just maybe, she could do it. She looked at the billionaire, her heart swelling with gratitude. I'll do it, she said, her voice firm with determination. I'll lead the project. The billionaire's smile widened. I knew you would. I'm looking forward to seeing what you accomplish. As the billionaire left her office, the waitress sat there for a moment, still processing everything. She had come so far in such a short time. It felt like a lifetime ago that she had been serving drinks in that small restaurant, barely making ends meet. Now, she was on the cusp of something much bigger. She felt a sense of pride that she had never known before, and for the first time, she truly believed in herself. The following weeks were a whirlwind. The waitress, now in her new role as project lead, found herself navigating even more complex situations, making decisions, and overseeing a team of her own. It was challenging, and at times, she felt out of her depth. But with each challenge she faced, she found a way to rise to the occasion. She relied on the lessons she had learned from the billionaire, particularly the importance of paying attention to the details. Slowly, the project began to take shape, and with each step, the waitress felt more confident in her abilities. One day, as she was preparing a presentation for the project's stakeholders, the billionaire walked into her office. How's it going? She asked, a smile playing at the corners of her mouth. The waitress looked up, her face lighting up with a mixture of excitement and pride. It's coming together, she said. I think we're ready to present. The billionaire nodded, her expression approving. I'm proud of you, she said, her voice warm. You've worked hard, and you're doing something that a lot of people didn't think was possible. The waitress smiled, feeling a rush of gratitude. Thank you. I couldn't have done it without your support. The billionaire gave a small, acknowledging nod. You've earned this every step of the way. The presentation went off without a hitch. The stakeholders were impressed, and the project was officially greenlit. As the waitress stood in front of her team, receiving congratulations from her colleagues, she couldn't help but feel a sense of awe. She had come so far, and this was just the beginning. The young girl who had once served food in a restaurant had now proven herself as a capable leader, trusted to lead a major project. And she knew that this was only the start of her journey. There was so much more ahead, so many more challenges to face, and so much more to accomplish. The next few months proved to be a whirlwind for the waitress-turned-project leader. The project she had spearheaded had been a success, but with success came even more responsibility. She had become a trusted leader in the company, someone whose opinions were valued and whose decisions mattered. And though she felt a sense of pride in everything she had achieved, there were moments when the weight of it all felt overwhelming. One particularly long day, after a meeting where she had to make several tough decisions, she found herself sitting alone in her office, staring at the papers in front of her. The office was quiet, the only sound coming from the hum of the city outside. Her mind was racing, and for the first time since she had started this journey, she felt unsure of herself. Could she keep up this pace? Was she really cut out for this level of responsibility? The doubts crept in, but before she could spiral too far, there was a soft knock at her door. It was the billionaire. She had been her mentor, her guide, and now, she seemed to have an almost instinctual sense of when the waitress needed her. May I come in? The billionaire asked, stepping into the room without waiting for a response. The waitress nodded, feeling a sense of relief wash over her. "I just wanted to check in with you," the billionaire said, her voice calm and steady. "How are you doing?" The waitress hesitated for a moment before speaking. "I'm okay," she said, her voice betraying a hint of uncertainty. "It's just that there's so much to handle now. I'm not sure if I can keep up." The billionaire walked over to her desk and sat down across from her. "It's normal to feel that way," she said softly. "You've been given a lot of responsibility, and it's not easy. But I believe in you." The waitress looked at her, her eyes filled with both gratitude and doubt. "But what if I'm not enough? What if I can't do it?" The billionaire smiled, a knowing smile. "I've been where you are," she said. "I've had moments when I doubted myself, when I thought I wasn't enough. But you know what? You're here because you are enough. You've proven that already. You've earned your place in this world, and you've done it through your hard work and your character." The waitress felt a lump form in her throat. She had never had someone speak to her like this, with such belief in her abilities. It was as if the billionaire saw something in her that she hadn't even seen in herself. "I just want to make sure I'm doing things the right way," the waitress said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I don't want to let anyone down." The billionaire reached across the desk, placing a hand on hers. "You won't let anyone down," she said firmly. "You've already done more than most people could ever dream of. The important thing is to trust yourself and know that you have the support of the people around you, including me." The waitress looked at her hand resting in the billionaire's, and for the first time in weeks, she felt a sense of peace. She wasn't alone in this. She had come so far, and now she knew she had someone in her corner who truly believed in her. "Thank you," she said quietly, her voice filled with emotion. "You don't know how much that means to me." The billionaire smiled, her eyes softening. "I do know. And I'm proud of you." Over the following weeks, the waitress took the billionaire's words to heart. She focused on trusting herself more, and with each passing day, she grew more confident in her abilities. She continued to lead the project with determination and care, making sure to balance her professional responsibilities with the kindness and attention to detail that had gotten her to this point. Her team began to recognize her as not just a leader, but as someone who genuinely cared about their well-being and success. One afternoon, as she sat in the conference room, preparing for another important meeting, the billionaire walked in. She looked at the waitress with a proud smile. "The board is thrilled with your progress," she said. "You've not only kept the project on track, but you've exceeded expectations. You're doing an amazing job." The waitress felt a wave of pride wash over her, and for a moment, she allowed herself to bask in the recognition. She had worked so hard, and now, all of it was paying off. But she knew that this success wasn't just about the project. It was about the journey she had taken, about how far she had come from that small restaurant to standing here, in this powerful position. "Thank you," she said, her voice steady but full of emotion. "I couldn't have done it without your help." The billionaire nodded. "You did it, but I'm glad I could be part of your journey." The waitress smiled, feeling a deep sense of gratitude. She had arrived at a place she never imagined was possible, and now, the path ahead seemed even brighter. She had found her confidence, her voice, and her purpose. And with the support of the billionaire and the trust she had in herself, she knew she could face whatever challenges the future might hold. As the months passed, the waitress-turned-leader found herself more deeply entrenched in the company, her responsibilities continuing to grow. The pressure was mounting, and though she had gained confidence in her ability to lead, the weight of her new life was beginning to take its toll. The once clear path she had walked so confidently was now clouded with doubts. She was no longer just the young waitress with a dream, she was now a key player in a multi-million-dollar company, a position she never thought she would reach. Yet, as the days grew longer and the demands increased, she started to question if she was truly capable of handling it all. One evening, after another long day at the office, she found herself sitting alone in her apartment, staring out the window at the city below. The lights twinkled in the distance, a symbol of the world she had become a part of. She had worked so hard to get here, and yet, it all felt so distant, so much bigger than her. She wanted to make a difference, but was she doing enough? Was she truly making the impact she hoped for? Just as she was lost in thought, her phone buzzed on the table. It was a message from the billionaire. "Meet me tomorrow. I need to talk to you about something important." The words immediately pulled her from her thoughts. What could it be? Was it about the project she had been leading? Had something gone wrong? She couldn't help but feel a sense of unease. The next day, she arrived at the office early, her mind racing with questions. She was shown into the billionaire's private office, and as she walked in, she found the billionaire standing by the window, looking out over the city. "Come in, please," the billionaire said with a soft smile. "Have a seat." The waitress did as she was told, sitting across from her mentor, trying to calm the flutter of nerves in her stomach. "What's going on?" she asked, her voice steady, though her curiosity was evident. The billionaire turned to face her, her expression serious. "I've been watching you closely, and I'm proud of the progress you've made," she began. "You've shown tremendous growth, and you've proven yourself time and time again." The waitress felt a rush of gratitude at the praise, but she could also sense that there was more to come. "But," the billionaire continued, her voice soft but firm, "I think it's time for you to take on something even bigger." The waitress raised an eyebrow. "What do you mean?" she asked. "I want you to take over a new initiative," the billionaire said. "It's an ambitious project, but I believe you have the vision and the determination to make it a success." The waitress's heart skipped a beat. Another project? Something even bigger than what she had already done? She was both excited and terrified at the prospect. "I'm honored that you think I can handle it," she said, her voice trembling slightly. "But, what if I fail? What if I can't do it?" The billionaire's gaze softened, and she took a step closer to the waitress. "Failure is part of growth," she said, her voice calm and reassuring. "You've already shown that you're capable of overcoming challenges. This is just the next step in your journey. Don't be afraid to take it. I have complete faith in you." The waitress felt a lump form in her throat as she listened to the billionaire's words. She had always been afraid of failure, afraid of disappointing those around her. But here, in this moment, the billionaire was telling her not to fear it, to embrace it as part of the process. It was a powerful message, one that gave her the courage she needed. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice filled with gratitude. "I won't let you down." The billionaire smiled. "I know you won't." Over the next few weeks, the waitress threw herself into the new project with everything she had. It was bigger, more complex, and more challenging than anything she had ever done before, but it was also exactly what she needed to push herself further. She spent long hours working with her team, brainstorming ideas, solving problems, and ensuring everything ran smoothly. There were moments when she doubted herself, when the pressure seemed too much, but she would remember the billionaire's words, "Failure is part of growth," and it gave her the strength to keep going. Slowly, the project began to take shape, and with each success, the waitress felt a growing sense of pride. She had come so far, from a waitress in a restaurant to a project leader in a major corporation, and now, she was leading something that could change everything. The team she worked with began to rely on her judgment, and the respect she had earned from her colleagues only grew. But it wasn't just the success of the project that mattered to her, it was the way she had changed, the way she had grown. She was no longer the unsure young girl who had been afraid to step into the unknown. She was a leader, a force to be reckoned with, and she knew that she had earned her place in this world. One afternoon, as the project neared its completion, the billionaire called her into her office. "I just wanted to check in," she said, her tone warm but serious. "How are you feeling?" The waitress smiled, feeling a sense of accomplishment wash over her. "I think we're almost there," she said. "It's been a lot of work, but I'm proud of what we've achieved." The billionaire nodded, a glint of pride in her eyes. "You've done an incredible job. You've earned everything that's coming to you." The waitress couldn't help but feel a rush of gratitude. She had worked hard, and now, she was about to see the fruits of her labor. As she left the billionaire's office, she realized that this was just the beginning. There were still many challenges ahead, but for the first time, she was excited for the future. She had found her confidence, her voice, and her purpose. She was ready for whatever came next. The weeks that followed the successful completion of the major project felt like a blur for the waitress-turned-leader. She had grown accustomed to the whirlwind of high-level meetings, decisions that carried weight, and the expectations that seemed to grow with each accomplishment. But as she navigated the complexities of her new role, a sense of unease began to creep in. Her colleagues now viewed her as a leader, but she couldn't shake the feeling that she wasn't fully accepted. There were whispers in the halls, and despite her successes, there were those who still saw her as an outsider, as someone who didn't belong in the upper echelons of the business world. One afternoon, as she sat in her office reviewing some project reports, she heard a soft knock at the door. It was one of her colleagues, a man named Alex, who had been working in the company for years. He had always been polite but distant, never quite engaging with her. Today, however, he looked different. His usual confident demeanor was replaced with something that resembled concern. "Can I speak with you for a moment?" he asked, his voice hesitant. The waitress-turned-leader motioned for him to sit, offering a smile to mask her nervousness. "Of course. What's on your mind?" Alex hesitated before speaking, clearly uncomfortable. "I just wanted to be upfront with you. There's been some talk in the office," he said slowly, his words measured. The waitress-turned-leader immediately felt her stomach tighten. "Talk," she repeated, unsure if she wanted to hear more. "Yes," Alex continued, glancing around as though checking to see if anyone was listening. "People are saying that you don't really belong here. That you're not qualified for your position." The words hit her like a slap, and she struggled to keep her expression neutral. She had known that some people in the company might not accept her, but hearing it out loud, from someone she considered a peer, stung more than she expected. "I see," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "And what do you think?" Alex shifted in his seat, clearly uncomfortable with the confrontation. "Honestly, I think you've proven yourself. But others, they're not so sure. There's always going to be resistance when someone unexpected rises to the top." His words were honest, but they didn't make the situation feel any better. The waitress-turned-leader sat in silence for a moment, taking in the information. She had faced challenges before, but this felt different. It wasn't just about getting the job done anymore, it was about belonging. She had worked tirelessly to prove herself, but the doubts of others were hard to ignore. "What should I do?" she asked quietly, looking at Alex for answers. He looked at her with a sense of empathy. "You need to keep proving yourself. Let your work speak for itself. Don't let their whispers distract you. You've earned this position, and you have the skills to succeed. Don't let anyone take that away from you." His words, though comforting, left her with a lingering sense of doubt. She had come so far, but was it enough? Could she continue to navigate this world that felt like it would never fully accept her? Over the next few days, she found herself wrestling with these questions, trying to focus on the work at hand while the voices of doubt crept into her mind. One evening, as she prepared to leave the office, the billionaire approached her. She was standing by the door, looking out at the city, her posture regal and composed. "I heard what happened," the billionaire said, her voice calm but filled with concern. "Are you okay?" The waitress-turned-leader nodded, though she couldn't quite mask the exhaustion in her eyes. "I'm fine," she said, trying to reassure the billionaire. "Just a little tired. It's been a lot to handle lately." The billionaire studied her for a moment before stepping closer. "I know it's hard," she said softly. "Being in this world, surrounded by people who don't always understand your journey, can make you feel isolated. But you need to know something, you've earned your place here. No one can take that away from you." The words were comforting, but they didn't quite ease the weight in her chest. She had spent so much of her life trying to prove herself, trying to be seen, and now that she was here, it still felt like she was fighting for her right to belong. "I just don't know if I can keep doing it," she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. "I don't know if I'm enough." The billionaire's gaze softened, and she reached out, placing a hand on the waitress-turned-leader's shoulder. "You are more than enough," she said firmly. You've done things that most people couldn't even dream of. You've proven your worth with every project you've led, every challenge you've overcome. This company wouldn't be the same without you. The waitress-turned-leader looked at her mentor, her eyes welling up with emotion. The support she had always longed for was finally here, from someone who truly believed in her. Thank you, she whispered, her voice thick with gratitude. I needed to hear that. The billionaire smiled, her eyes filled with pride. I know. And I'm proud of you. You're not just part of this company, you're shaping it. You belong here, and you always will. With that, the waitress-turned-leader felt a shift inside her. She had spent so much time trying to fit in, trying to prove herself to others, that she had forgotten the most important thing: she didn't need anyone's approval to know her worth. She had already earned it. With renewed determination, she walked out of the office that night, the weight on her shoulders lighter than it had been in days. She was no longer going to let the doubts of others define her. She knew her place, and it was at the top. The waitress-turned-leader had spent so many months proving herself, working tirelessly to build something she could be proud of. But as the days went on, the challenges only seemed to multiply. Despite her success, she began to feel like the weight of the world was pressing down on her, and the whispers that once seemed insignificant now felt like an ever-present reminder of the doubts people still had. It was late one evening when the billionaire called her into her office again. The atmosphere was heavy with expectation. She had just finished a long, grueling meeting with the board, and her energy was nearly spent. Yet, she knew she couldn't ignore the call. She walked into the billionaire's office, the sleek walls and modern furnishings a reminder of how far she had come. The billionaire looked up from her desk, a familiar smile on her face, but there was something different in her eyes this time. Come in, please, she said, her tone calm but warm. How's everything going? The waitress-turned-leader hesitated for a moment, her thoughts swirling. She didn't want to admit how difficult things had become, but she couldn't lie to the one person who had always supported her. It's been tough, she said, her voice soft. There's a lot on my plate right now, and I feel like no matter what I do, it's never enough. The billionaire nodded, her gaze understanding. I can imagine. The higher you go, the more pressure there is. But I need you to remember something. You've already achieved so much. You've proven your worth over and over again. Don't let anyone, not even yourself, make you doubt that. The waitress-turned-leader felt the weight of the billionaire's words sink in. She had worked so hard to get here, to overcome every obstacle, and yet, in this moment, she felt as if she was losing sight of everything she had accomplished. But what if it's still not enough, she asked quietly, her voice barely above a whisper. What if they're right? What if I don't belong here? The billionaire stood up and walked over to where she was sitting, her steps measured and purposeful. Let me tell you something, she said, her voice firm but kind. There will always be people who doubt you, who try to make you feel like you don't belong. But what matters is not what they think. It's about how you see yourself. You are more than enough, and you've proven that time and time again. The waitress-turned-leader looked at her mentor, the weight of her words starting to sink in. She had been so focused on what others thought of her, so concerned with proving her worth to everyone around her, that she had lost sight of the fact that she had already earned her place. The billionaire continued, her eyes filled with conviction. You've earned this position, and you've done it with hard work, determination, and integrity. Don't let anyone, not even the doubts in your own mind, take that away from you. The waitress-turned-leader took a deep breath, feeling a flicker of something inside her. It was hope, a reminder that she had already come so far. Thank you, she said softly, the words carrying more weight than she expected. The billionaire smiled, her gaze softening. You don't need to thank me. Just keep believing in yourself, as I believe in you. As the conversation ended, the waitress-turned-leader left the billionaire's office with a renewed sense of purpose. The weight on her shoulders didn't magically disappear, but for the first time in a long time, she felt ready to face it head-on. She wasn't going to let the doubts of others define her anymore. She was a leader, and no one could take that away from her. The next day, she walked into the office with a sense of determination she hadn't felt in weeks. She was no longer worried about what others thought. She was going to focus on what she knew she was capable of. As she worked through her tasks, making decisions and leading her team with confidence, she felt something shift inside her. The whispers that once made her question herself no longer had the same power over her. She knew who she was, and she knew what she had accomplished. As the days turned into weeks, the waitress-turned-leader found herself not only leading successful projects but also becoming a mentor to others. She had earned the respect of her peers, and more importantly, she had earned her own self-respect. She was no longer the unsure young woman who had stepped into the company with nothing but hope and determination. She was a force to be reckoned with. And with the billionaire's unwavering support and belief in her, she knew there was nothing she couldn't achieve. The weeks that followed were a turning point for the waitress-turned-leader. Her confidence had grown, but with it came new challenges that pushed her even further out of her comfort zone. The weight of responsibility was heavier than ever, and yet, she felt more capable than before. The projects continued to succeed, but the strain of managing multiple responsibilities began to take its toll. Late one afternoon, as she sat at her desk, reviewing the final details for a major presentation, a soft knock on her office door broke her concentration. It was the billionaire, as always, her presence a comforting constant in the whirlwind of the young leader's life. "May I come in?" she asked, her tone light, though the waitress-turned-leader could tell there was something more. "Of course," she replied, straightening up in her chair. The billionaire walked in and closed the door behind her, pausing for a moment before sitting down across from her. "How are you holding up?" she asked, her voice warm but with a hint of concern. The waitress-turned-leader smiled faintly, though the exhaustion was evident in her eyes. "I'm managing," she said, though the words felt hollow. "There's just so much to do, and sometimes I feel like I'm stretched too thin." The billionaire nodded, her expression sympathetic. "I understand. But I need you to remember something, you're not alone in this." The waitress-turned-leader looked at her, surprised. "What do you mean?" she asked. "You've made incredible strides," the billionaire said, her voice steady. "But there's a difference between leading and leading alone. I think it's time you start building a team that can support you, so you don't have to carry it all on your own." The words resonated deeply with the waitress-turned-leader. She had always been the one to take on everything herself, believing that it was her responsibility to do it all. But now, she realized how important it was to delegate, to trust others. The weight she had been carrying wasn't just hers, it was the weight of the entire company. And it was time to share it. "You're right," she said, her voice more resolute now. "I can't do everything by myself. I need to learn how to trust the people around me." The billionaire smiled. "Exactly. And I know you have the skills to lead a team. But it starts with letting go and empowering others to take responsibility." Over the next few weeks, the waitress-turned-leader began the difficult process of delegating tasks. She met with her team, carefully selecting individuals who not only had the skills but also the passion to help carry the load. It wasn't easy. Letting go of control was one of the hardest things she had ever done. But slowly, she started to see the benefits. Her team rose to the occasion, offering creative solutions, new perspectives, and taking on responsibilities that allowed her to focus on what really mattered. The feeling of relief was palpable. She wasn't just a leader anymore, she was part of a team, and together, they were achieving far more than she ever could have alone. One afternoon, as she was reviewing a new proposal with her team, the billionaire stopped by her office. She watched as the waitress-turned-leader collaborated effortlessly with her colleagues, guiding them with confidence, but also listening and learning from them. When the meeting was over, the billionaire waited until everyone had left before approaching. "I'm proud of you," she said quietly, her voice filled with genuine admiration. "You've done more than just build a team, you've built a culture. A culture of trust and collaboration." The waitress-turned-leader felt a wave of pride wash over her, a feeling she hadn't allowed herself to experience in a long time. She had earned this. "Thank you," she replied, her voice steady, but her heart full. "It wasn't easy, but I think I'm starting to understand what leadership is really about." The billionaire nodded. "Leadership isn't just about making decisions or giving orders. It's about empowering others to rise up and take ownership of their work. You've done that. As the days passed, the waitress-turned-leader began to see the results of her new approach. Her team was more engaged, more motivated, and the company was stronger than ever. She felt more confident in her role and more connected to those around her. The doubts that once plagued her mind began to fade, replaced by a growing sense of accomplishment. She had come a long way from the nervous, uncertain girl who had first stepped into the office. She had proven herself not just as a capable leader, but as someone who could inspire and empower others to achieve greatness. One evening, as she stood by the window of her office, looking out over the city, the billionaire joined her. "I just wanted to check in," the billionaire said, her voice calm and reassuring. "How do you feel about everything now?" The waitress-turned-leader turned to her, her face alight with a new sense of purpose. "I feel like I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be," she said, her voice strong and confident. "I've learned so much. Not just about business, but about myself. I know what I'm capable of, and I know what it takes to lead." The billionaire smiled, her eyes filled with pride. "And you've done it. You've proven that you're more than capable. I'm proud of you." As the waitress-turned-leader looked out at the city once more, she realized that this was just the beginning. She had faced so many obstacles, but she had overcome them all. And now, with her team by her side, she knew there was nothing she couldn't accomplish. Months passed, and the waitress-turned-leader continued to grow into her role. The company was thriving, and the projects she had been entrusted with were becoming more successful than ever. But even with the increasing recognition and respect, she couldn't help but feel the pull of an unsettling question: what was next for her? She had achieved so much already, but deep down, she knew that her journey was far from over. She had climbed to the top, but the view was different. Now, the responsibilities were greater, and the stakes were higher. As she walked through the office one day, she saw the familiar faces of her colleagues, many of whom had once doubted her. But now, they came to her for advice, for guidance. It was a strange feeling, knowing that she had earned their trust, that she had proved herself to be capable in ways they had never imagined. Yet, there was still a sense of uncertainty, an unknown that loomed ahead. That evening, she found herself at dinner with the billionaire, who had always been there to guide her, offering wisdom when she needed it most. The restaurant was quiet, the flickering candlelight casting a warm glow across the table. The billionaire smiled at her, her eyes full of pride. "You've done an incredible job," she said, her voice filled with admiration. "The company is stronger because of your leadership." The waitress-turned-leader smiled, though she felt the weight of her thoughts pressing down on her. "I appreciate that," she said softly. "But I'm starting to wonder if I've reached my limit. I don't know what comes next. I've achieved so much, but what more is there for me to do?" The billionaire studied her for a moment, as if weighing her words carefully. "It's natural to feel that way," she said slowly. "When you've reached a certain point, it's easy to question what more you can give. But let me tell you something important: growth doesn't stop just because you've succeeded. In fact, the real challenge begins now. It's about continuing to push yourself and finding new ways to contribute." The waitress-turned-leader took in her words, the weight of them settling in her chest. She had worked so hard to get where she was, but the thought of continuing to push herself, to climb even higher, felt daunting. "But how do I know if I'm ready for that next step?" she asked, the doubt creeping back into her voice. "How do I know if I'm truly prepared for what comes next?" The billionaire smiled, her gaze filled with wisdom. "You'll never feel completely ready," she said, her tone gentle but firm. "That's the nature of growth. It's not about being ready, it's about trusting yourself enough to take the leap. You've proven time and again that you can handle whatever comes your way. You have the skills, the heart, and the vision to continue making a difference. You just need to trust that the next step is a natural part of the journey." The waitress-turned-leader sat back in her chair, processing the billionaire's words. It was true. She had always been hesitant to take risks, to step into the unknown. But with every challenge she had faced, she had grown stronger, more capable. Maybe it wasn't about being ready, it was about trusting herself to adapt and evolve. "I think I understand," she said, her voice steady. It's not about waiting for the perfect moment. It's about trusting that I'm ready for whatever comes next. The billionaire nodded, her smile widening. Exactly. And remember, you're not alone in this. You have a team, you have support, and you have the strength to keep going. The waitress-turned-leader smiled, feeling a renewed sense of clarity. For the first time in a while, she wasn't afraid of what the future held. She had faced so many obstacles, and she had overcome them all. She had proven herself in ways she never thought possible. Now, it was time to take the next step, to trust that she could handle whatever came her way. The next day, as she walked into the office, she felt a sense of confidence that had been missing before. She wasn't just leading the company, she was helping shape its future. She had learned that success wasn't just about achieving a goal, it was about the ongoing process of growth and learning. She had already achieved so much, but there was so much more ahead. And she was ready. With each new task, each new challenge, she moved forward with a newfound determination. She wasn't just the waitress-turned-leader anymore. She was a force in the company, someone who would continue to make her mark and inspire others along the way. Her journey had only just begun. The waitress-turned-leader had truly come into her own. With each passing day, the once uncertain young woman had blossomed into someone who led with confidence, intelligence, and compassion. Her role in the company had grown, and now, she was not only managing high-profile projects but also shaping the direction of the business itself. She had faced doubts, both from others and from within, but with each challenge, she had proven that she was more than capable of handling whatever came her way. However, as successful as she had become, she couldn't shake the feeling that something was still missing. She had worked hard to reach this point, but now, the question of legacy lingered in her mind. What was her ultimate purpose in all of this? She had built a career, but what was the deeper meaning of her journey? One day, as she was walking through the office, reviewing reports for a new venture, she was stopped by one of her trusted colleagues, Sarah, a young woman who had been working with her since the beginning. Sarah had become not only a colleague but a close friend, someone who shared the same values and vision for the future. "Hey, can we talk for a second?" Sarah asked, her tone light but with an underlying seriousness. "Of course," the waitress-turned-leader replied, gesturing to a nearby conference room. They both sat down, and Sarah looked at her for a moment, as if weighing her words. "I've been thinking," Sarah began, "about how far you've come. It's honestly amazing to see everything you've built. But I know it hasn't been easy. You've had to make a lot of tough decisions, and you've had to fight for your place here. But I want you to know that you've done it all with such grace. You've inspired so many of us." The waitress-turned-leader blinked, a wave of emotion catching her off guard. She had never been one to seek praise, but hearing it from someone she respected so deeply felt different. "Thank you, Sarah," she said softly, her voice barely above a whisper. "I've been thinking a lot about everything lately. I've achieved so much, but I don't always know if it's enough. Sometimes, I wonder if there's more I'm meant to do." Sarah leaned forward, her eyes filled with sincerity. "You're already doing it. You've created a space for us, a place where we feel valued and heard. You've set a standard for what leadership looks like, compassionate, determined, and strong. You've done more than just lead a company. You've built something that will last." The waitress-turned-leader smiled faintly, but Sarah's words resonated with her. She had been so focused on proving herself that she hadn't taken a moment to reflect on what she had truly accomplished. She had built more than just a career, she had created a culture, a team, and a legacy. It was time for her to embrace that truth. Later that evening, as the office emptied out and the building grew quieter, the waitress-turned-leader sat at her desk, reflecting on everything she had learned. She thought back to the day she had first stepped into the company, unsure and uncertain, but driven by a desire to make a difference. She had faced obstacles that seemed insurmountable, but she had always found a way through. She had built her reputation from the ground up, never taking shortcuts and always pushing herself to be better. But now, it was time for something different. It wasn't just about climbing higher anymore. It was about finding a way to leave a lasting impact, to inspire others to rise alongside her. That night, she made a decision. She would continue to lead, but she would also begin to focus on mentorship, on building the next generation of leaders. She would create a legacy that went beyond her own success. The next day, she met with the billionaire, her mentor, the person who had believed in her from the very beginning. She walked into the office, a newfound determination in her eyes. The billionaire looked up from her desk, sensing the shift in her demeanor. "What's on your mind?" she asked, setting down her pen. The waitress-turned-leader smiled, feeling a sense of peace settle over her. "I think I figured out what comes next," she said. "It's not just about me anymore. It's about all of us. I want to start focusing on mentorship, on helping others grow the way I've grown. I want to make sure that the work I've done here continues, that it lives on through the people I help develop." The billionaire's eyes softened, a proud smile tugging at the corners of her mouth. "I knew you were ready," she said. "This is exactly what I hoped you would do. Leadership isn't just about holding a title. It's about passing on what you've learned and helping others achieve their full potential. I'm proud of you." The waitress-turned-leader left the billionaire's office that day with a sense of purpose she hadn't felt before. She was no longer just a leader of the company, she was now a mentor, a guide, someone who would help shape the future of the business. It was a new chapter in her journey, one that focused on giving back, on building a legacy that would last far beyond her own accomplishments. As she looked out over the city that had become her home, she knew that this was just the beginning. There would be challenges ahead, but now, she was ready to face them, not alone, but with a team of talented, driven individuals by her side. She had already built a foundation for success, and now it was time to help others build theirs. The future was bright, and the waitress-turned-leader was ready to take on whatever came next. As the months continued to pass, the waitress-turned-leader found herself settling more into her new role. The weight of leadership was still there, but now, it felt lighter. She had learned the value of delegation, of trust, and most importantly, of mentoring others. She was no longer focused solely on climbing the corporate ladder, she was now concerned with the legacy she would leave behind and how to help others achieve their own success. She had worked with countless individuals, each of them striving for their own growth, and now, she could see the fruits of her labor. Her team had become stronger, more united, and more driven than ever. She spent time with them, listening to their ideas, guiding them through their struggles, and celebrating their successes. It was fulfilling work that reminded her of why she had fought so hard to get to this point. One day, as she was in a meeting with her team, discussing the upcoming goals for the next quarter, she was interrupted by a soft knock at the door. It was Sarah, one of the young leaders she had mentored, holding a file in her hands. "Can I talk to you for a minute?" Sarah asked, her voice hesitant but determined. "Of course," the waitress-turned-leader replied, excusing herself from the meeting. She stepped into the hallway with Sarah, sensing the urgency in her colleague's expression. "What's going on?" she asked, her tone calm but curious. Sarah took a deep breath, looking down at the file in her hands. "I've been thinking a lot about the future of the company, and I feel like we're at a crossroads," she said. "We've accomplished so much, but I think we're ready for something bigger. Something more ambitious." The waitress-turned-leader raised an eyebrow, intrigued by Sarah's words. "Go on," she encouraged. Sarah looked up, her eyes filled with determination. "I think it's time we expand. We've built something great here, but I feel like we have the potential to go further into new markets, new industries. It's going to be a huge risk, but I believe it's the right move." The waitress-turned-leader stood silent for a moment, weighing Sarah's words. She had always been cautious, careful to build on the foundation they had created, but the more she thought about it, the more she realized that Sarah was right. They had reached a point where they couldn't just remain comfortable, they had to push the boundaries, take risks, and explore new opportunities. "You're right," she finally said, her voice steady and resolute. "It's time to take the leap. Let's explore what's out there and see how we can expand our reach. But we need to do this carefully. We've worked too hard to let it all fall apart now." Sarah nodded, a look of gratitude in her eyes. "I knew you'd understand," she said, relief flooding her expression. The waitress-turned-leader smiled, a spark of excitement igniting in her chest. For so long, she had been focused on the day-to-day operations, but now, she could see the bigger picture. This was the next step, the leap that would allow them to grow even further, to make their mark on the world in ways they hadn't even imagined. They spent the next few weeks strategizing, carefully planning their expansion. The team came together, brainstorming ideas and developing a clear vision for the future. There were plenty of challenges along the way, and the road ahead was uncertain, but the waitress-turned-leader felt more confident than ever. She had a team behind her, and together, they could face anything. One afternoon, as she sat in her office reviewing the final plans for the expansion, the billionaire walked in, as composed and confident as always. "I heard about the new direction you're taking," she said, her eyes sharp but filled with approval. "I think it's a great idea." The waitress-turned-leader looked up from the documents in front of her, meeting the billionaire's gaze. "It's a big step," she said, her voice thoughtful. "But I think it's time. We can't stay stagnant, not with the opportunities out there." The billionaire nodded, her expression softening. "You've come so far," she said. "I'm proud of you. You've built something strong, and now, you're ready to take it to the next level. But remember, this journey isn't just about reaching new heights. It's about ensuring that everything you've built remains solid, no matter how big you grow." The waitress-turned-leader nodded, the weight of the billionaire's words sinking in. She knew that growth came with challenges, and it was essential to keep the integrity of the company intact as they expanded. "I'll make sure we stay true to our values," she said firmly. "I won't lose sight of what's important." The billionaire smiled, a glint of pride in her eyes. "I know you won't. You've got this." As the billionaire left her office, the waitress-turned-leader felt a renewed sense of purpose. She had built something incredible, and now, it was time to take it to new heights. She wasn't afraid of what the future held. She had already proven herself time and time again. And now, with the support of her team and the lessons she had learned along the way, she was ready for whatever came next. She was no longer just a leader, she was a visionary, and she would stop at nothing to ensure the company's continued success. The days following the decision to expand the company were filled with energy and anticipation. The waitress-turned-leader felt a renewed sense of purpose as she and her team mapped out the future. The challenges were enormous, but so were the possibilities. They worked tirelessly, collaborating with industry experts, identifying key markets, and crafting a strategy that would lead them into uncharted territory. Every decision felt crucial, and the pressure to get it right was immense. But amidst the whirlwind of meetings, presentations, and long hours, the waitress-turned-leader found herself reflecting on just how far she had come. It seemed like only yesterday she had been uncertain about her place in the world, doubting whether she was truly capable of handling such enormous responsibilities. Now, she was leading a team that was ready to take on the world, and she had the confidence to know they could succeed. Yet, with all the success came moments of doubt. There were days when she felt the weight of her decisions pressing down on her. Was she making the right choice? Was this the right path? She had built a solid foundation, but could she really push the company to new heights? These thoughts lingered in the back of her mind as she sat in her office late one evening, reviewing the final draft of the expansion proposal. Her eyes were tired, but her determination was unwavering. Just as she was finishing the document, she received a text message from the billionaire. "Meet me tomorrow. We need to talk." The words sent a small ripple of anxiety through her chest. She had grown so much, and yet, the billionaire's approval still meant everything to her. She wasn't sure why, but she needed to hear that her vision was on track. The next morning, she walked into the billionaire's office, her thoughts swirling. The billionaire looked up from the papers on her desk and smiled warmly, signaling for her to sit down. "I've been thinking about everything you've accomplished," the billionaire began, her tone filled with admiration. "You've done more than I ever expected. This company has grown under your leadership, and now, you're ready to take it even further. But I need to ask you something." The waitress-turned-leader nodded, unsure of where the conversation was heading. "What's the next step for you?" the billionaire asked, her eyes searching the waitress-turned-leader's face. "Where do you see yourself going from here?" The question hit her harder than expected. For so long, she had focused on the company's growth, on helping her team succeed. She had been so caught up in the day-to-day responsibilities that she hadn't taken the time to consider her own future beyond the company. I'm not sure, she admitted, her voice quieter than she intended. I know where the company is going, but I haven't thought much about where I'm headed personally. The billionaire nodded, understanding. It's easy to get lost in the work, she said, her voice softening. But you've come a long way. And now, it's time to think about your own legacy. What kind of leader do you want to be? What do you want to be remembered for? The waitress-turned-leader took a deep breath, considering the question carefully. She had always been focused on the here and now, on the immediate goals and the tasks at hand. But now, with the company expanding and her role evolving, she realized that it was time to step back and think about the bigger picture. I want to be remembered as someone who made a real difference, she said slowly. Not just for the company, but for the people I worked with. I want to inspire others, to help them see their own potential, like you helped me see mine. The billionaire smiled, clearly pleased with the answer. That's exactly what I was hoping to hear. You've built something extraordinary, and now, it's time for you to build something even bigger, your legacy. The words hung in the air, and for the first time, the waitress-turned-leader felt a sense of clarity wash over her. She had been so focused on the company's growth and the projects at hand that she had never stopped to consider the kind of legacy she wanted to leave behind. Now, with the support of the billionaire, she could see that her journey wasn't just about climbing the ladder of success. It was about shaping the future, about empowering others to reach their full potential, and about leaving a lasting impact on the world. Over the next few weeks, the waitress-turned-leader took the billionaire's words to heart. She began to mentor more individuals within the company, sharing her experiences, guiding them through their challenges, and helping them unlock their own potential. She started to realize that her true strength wasn't just in making decisions or leading teams, it was in helping others grow and reach heights they never thought possible. As the expansion plan continued to move forward, the waitress-turned-leader found herself thinking less about her own accomplishments and more about the team she had built and the future they were creating together. She had been given the chance to build something incredible, but now, it was time to focus on the legacy she would leave behind, one that would inspire generations to come. The company continued to grow, expanding into new markets, and with every success, the waitress-turned-leader felt more confident in the path she had chosen. She was no longer just a leader, she was a mentor, a visionary, someone who would inspire others to follow in her footsteps. And with that, she knew that her journey was far from over, it was only just beginning. As the company expanded, so did the waitress-turned-leader's sense of purpose. She had become not only the leader of a growing business but a mentor, someone who inspired those around her to be the best versions of themselves. The shift from focusing solely on her personal achievements to investing in the growth of others was a profound transformation. It wasn't just about the bottom line anymore, it was about creating an environment where success was shared and where everyone had the opportunity to thrive. The expansion into new markets was proving successful, and the company's reputation continued to grow. Yet, with every success, new challenges emerged. The competition was fierce, and as they entered new industries, the pressure to maintain their position in the market mounted. The waitress-turned-leader found herself facing situations where quick decisions were needed, where every move felt like it could make or break the company's future. One particularly intense week, she found herself spending long hours at the office, analyzing data, meeting with stakeholders, and fine-tuning strategies. It felt as though the demands on her were endless, and there were days when she questioned whether she could keep up with the pace. In the midst of all this, Sarah, one of her most trusted colleagues in Men's, came into her office. Sarah had grown into a capable leader in her own right, and she had proven herself time and again. Today, however, Sarah's face held an expression of concern. "Can we talk?" she asked softly, her voice carrying a weight that immediately made the waitress-turned-leader set aside the reports she was reviewing. "Of course," she replied, sensing the seriousness in Sarah's demeanor. Sarah closed the door behind her and sat down across from the waitress-turned-leader. "I know you've been working nonstop lately, and I just wanted to check in," she said. "I've noticed how much you've been pushing yourself, and I'm concerned." The waitress-turned-leader looked at her, appreciating Sarah's concern, but she couldn't help but feel a small pang of frustration. I'm fine, she said, her tone more clipped than she intended. There's a lot to do, but we're doing well. Everything's on track. Sarah shook her head slightly. I don't think you're fine, she said gently. You're stretched too thin. And I can see it. You've been carrying so much for so long, and it's starting to show. I think you need to take a step back. Delegate more. You don't have to do it all on your own. The words struck a chord with the waitress-turned-leader. For so long, she had taken pride in doing everything herself, in being the one to push the company forward. It was hard to admit, but she knew Sarah was right. She had been trying to carry the entire burden. Afraid that if she didn't, the foundation she had worked so hard to build would collapse. I don't know how to stop, she said, her voice a little softer now, more vulnerable than usual. I feel like if I stop, everything will fall apart. I'm the one who's supposed to keep everything moving. Sarah's gaze softened. You've already built something incredible, she said. But you can't keep running at this pace forever. You've created a team that's capable of taking on more. You don't have to do it alone. Trust us, trust me. We're here to support you, just like you've supported us. The waitress-turned-leader sat back in her chair, taking a deep breath. She had spent so much time fighting to prove herself, to show that she could do it all. Letting go of that control felt terrifying. But as she looked at Sarah, she realized that it was time to trust the people around her, to trust her team. She had built this company not just with her own strength but with the collective effort of everyone she had brought together. It was time to share the load. You're right, she said quietly. I've been so focused on keeping everything under control that I've forgotten what it means to lead by empowering others. I've created something great, but now it's time to let others step up and contribute more. Sarah smiled, a sense of relief in her eyes. Exactly. You don't have to do it all, and you've already done more than enough. The waitress-turned-leader stood up, walking over to the window and looking out at the city below. The weight of the moment settled on her, but this time, it felt different. It wasn't a burden she was carrying alone. It was a shared responsibility, a shared vision. And with that, she realized that her leadership wasn't about doing everything herself, it was about building something sustainable, something that could continue to grow without relying on any one person. As the days went on, the waitress-turned-leader began to delegate more, to step back and trust the people around her. It wasn't easy, but she could feel the shift. The team rose to the occasion, stepping up and taking on new responsibilities with confidence and skill. With the right people in place, the company didn't just survive, it thrived. One afternoon, as the company celebrated the successful launch of their latest project, the waitress-turned-leader looked around the room, taking in the smiling faces of her team. She had built something lasting, not just in terms of the business, but in the relationships and trust that had been formed. She had created a company where everyone had a chance to succeed, where leadership was shared, and where the vision for the future was brighter than ever. As she stood there, surrounded by her colleagues and friends, the waitress-turned-leader realized that this was the legacy she had been working toward all along. It wasn't just about building a successful company, it was about empowering others to reach their full potential, to lead, and to make a difference. And with that, she knew that she had truly succeeded. Months passed, and the company's expansion was in full swing. The waitress-turned-leader had not only helped the business grow but had fostered a culture of collaboration and empowerment that had become the backbone of their success. Her leadership was now being recognized not just within the company, but throughout the industry. Yet, even with all the progress, she found herself facing a new challenge: how to balance the rapid growth with the values that had made the company successful in the first place. The pressure to continue to push boundaries was immense, and as the leader, she often felt the weight of it all. One morning, as she walked into the office, she was met with a series of reports detailing the company's performance over the past few months. The numbers were impressive, the markets they had entered were growing, but something didn't feel right. The pace was relentless, and it was starting to feel like they were losing the personal touch that had made the company stand out in the first place. As she sat at her desk, going through the reports, Sarah, one of her closest colleagues and men's, entered the room. Sarah had grown into a strong leader in her own right, someone who had taken on more responsibility and proven herself capable time and time again. "Hey, can I talk to you for a minute?" Sarah asked, her tone serious but warm. "Of course," the waitress-turned-leader replied, setting the reports down and giving her full attention. Sarah sat down across from her, her expression thoughtful. "I've been thinking about everything that's happening," Sarah said. "I know we're growing, and I know we're all excited about the future, but I can't help but feel like we're losing touch with what makes us different. I've seen it in the team, and I've felt it myself. The pressure to expand is overwhelming, but I'm worried we're forgetting the values that made us who we are." The waitress-turned-leader listened intently, her heart sinking slightly. She had felt the same way, but hearing it from Sarah made it feel real, undeniable. "I've noticed it too," she admitted, her voice tinged with concern. "We're growing so fast, but in the process, we're losing that connection, that sense of purpose. I've been so focused on pushing for success that I've forgotten why we started this in the first place." Sarah nodded, understanding. It's easy to get caught up in the numbers, the growth, and the recognition. But what about the people who helped us get here? What about the culture we built? We can't afford to lose that. The waitress-turned-leader looked out the window, deep in thought. She had been so driven to lead the company to success that she had failed to realize what really mattered in the long term. It wasn't just about the markets they entered or the deals they closed, it was about the people, the relationships, and the values that had guided them all along. "You're right," she said softly. "I've been so focused on the destination that I've forgotten about the journey. I've been pushing for growth without considering how we can grow in a way that stays true to who we are." Sarah smiled, a look of relief crossing her face. "I knew you'd see it," she said. "We don't need to stop growing, but we need to find a way to do it without compromising what makes us unique. We need to make sure we're still creating value, not just for the company, but for the people we serve, both our team and our clients." The waitress-turned-leader felt a sense of clarity wash over her. She had been so focused on external success that she had overlooked the most important aspect, sustaining the integrity and values that had made the company stand out in the first place. She had built something incredible, but now it was time to focus on maintaining it, nurturing it, and ensuring it remained true to its roots. "I think it's time for a shift," she said, her voice steady with conviction. "We need to make sure that as we grow, we don't lose sight of our values. We need to re-establish that personal touch, the sense of purpose that brought us together in the first place. We can't let the success we've achieved make us lose what really matters." Sarah nodded, a sense of pride in her eyes. "I'm with you," she said. "Let's find a way to make that happen." Over the next few weeks, the waitress-turned-leader and Sarah worked together to re-evaluate the company's approach. They met with their teams, gathered feedback, and reassessed their goals. They introduced initiatives to ensure that the company's culture remained strong and that every employee, no matter their position, felt valued. They focused on creating a balance between growth and maintaining their values, ensuring that their success wasn't built at the expense of what made them different. It was a challenging process, but one that brought the team closer together. The company's expansion continued, but now, there was a renewed focus on quality over quantity, on relationships over profits, and on purpose over prestige. As the waitress-turned-leader stood at the helm, she realized that the true measure of her success wasn't just in the numbers, it was in the impact they had on the people around them, both inside the company and beyond. The future was still uncertain, but for the first time, she felt confident that the company was moving in the right direction, not just for growth, but for a lasting legacy that would inspire others for years to come. The company had reached new heights, but the challenges that came with this success were not to be underestimated. The waitress-turned-leader had managed to maintain the balance between growth and values, but as they entered new markets, the demands on her time and energy only increased. The once manageable pace of work had become an overwhelming whirlwind. As the team navigated the complexities of these new ventures, the waitress-turned-leader began to feel the strain of juggling so many responsibilities. It seemed as though there were always more decisions to make, more projects to oversee, and more people to mentor. The pressure weighed heavily on her, and despite all the progress they had made, she began to wonder if she was truly equipped to handle it all. She had built a team that was strong and capable, but now, she found herself questioning. if she was giving them the right direction, if she was truly leading them where they needed to go. One evening, after yet another long day of back-to-back meetings, she sat alone in her office, staring at the reports spread out before her. The numbers were good, better than they had been in years, but her mind was clouded with doubt. She had always prided herself on being the one to keep things moving, to drive the company forward. But now, she felt as though she was losing control, and the uncertainty gnawed at her. Just as she was about to shut down her computer for the night, there was a knock at the door. It was Sarah, her trusted colleague and friend, with a concerned expression on her face. "Can we talk?" Sarah asked, stepping into the office without waiting for a response. The waitress-turned-leader looked up, a tired smile on her face. "Of course," she said, gesturing for Sarah to sit. "What's on your mind?" Sarah sat down, folding her hands in her lap. "I've been noticing that you've been under a lot of pressure lately," she said gently. "I know things are moving fast, and I know you're juggling a million things at once, but I just wanted to remind you that you don't have to do it all alone." The words hit the waitress-turned-leader harder than she expected. She had always been the one who took everything on her shoulders, believing that if she didn't, things would fall apart. But hearing Sarah's words made her realize that she had been shutting herself off from the very thing she had spent so much time building, a team that could help support her. "I guess I've been trying to handle everything myself," the waitress-turned-leader admitted, her voice quiet. "I don't want to disappoint anyone, and I don't want to let the company down. But I feel like I'm starting to lose control." Sarah gave her a compassionate look. "You've built something incredible," she said. "You've already done so much. But part of being a great leader is knowing when to trust others. We're all here to support you, and you don't have to carry everything by yourself." The waitress-turned-leader sat back in her chair, processing Sarah's words. She had always thought that her worth as a leader was tied to how much she could handle on her own, how much she could take on without faltering. But now, she realized that her strength wasn't just in handling everything herself, it was in building a team that could share the load and in trusting others to help lead the way. "You're right," the waitress-turned-leader said, her voice steadier now. "I've been afraid to let go, afraid that if I do, everything will fall apart. But maybe I need to start trusting you all more." Sarah smiled, a look of relief crossing her face. "We're here for you. We've got your back, just like you've always had ours." The waitress-turned-leader took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the moment. It was time to make a change. She had built a company based on collaboration, trust, and mutual support, and it was time to embrace those values more fully in her leadership. She didn't have to do it all. With the right people by her side, she could achieve even more. The next day, she called a meeting with her leadership team, determined to open up about her struggles and ask for their support. She had spent so much time focusing on guiding others, but now, it was time to allow herself to be guided as well. As she shared her concerns and the overwhelming pressure she had been feeling, she saw the faces of her team members soften with understanding. It wasn't easy for her to admit that she couldn't do everything on her own, but in that moment, she felt a shift. Her team wasn't there to judge her, they were there to help her succeed. "I've been carrying a lot, and I think it's time I lean on you more," she said, her voice calm but filled with sincerity. "I know I've set high expectations for all of us, but I want to make sure that as we continue to grow, we're doing it in a way that doesn't burn us out." Her team nodded, and one by one, they offered their support, assuring her that they were there to share the responsibility, to help guide the company through the next phase of growth. It was a pivotal moment, one that allowed her to see how much her leadership had already impacted the team. She had given them the tools to succeed, and now, they were ready to step up and help her shoulder the load. Over the following months, the waitress-turned-leader learned to delegate more, to trust her team even more deeply, and to embrace the strength that came from shared leadership. The company continued to thrive, but this time, it was not just her success, it was the success of everyone who had helped build it. She had learned that leadership wasn't just about making decisions or carrying the weight of the company, it was about empowering others, trusting them, and guiding them to their own success. And in that, she had found not just success, but fulfillment. The waitress-turned-leader's growth continued at an incredible pace, and as she delegated more to her team, the company began to thrive in ways she hadn't imagined. The trust she had placed in her colleagues paid off, and the work was becoming a true reflection of their collective effort. The overwhelming pressure she had once felt slowly started to dissipate, replaced by a sense of shared accomplishment. With every new milestone reached, her belief in her team grew stronger. Yet, despite all the success, she couldn't shake the feeling that there was still something missing. The company had become a place of collaboration, growth, and achievement, but her heart yearned for something deeper, something beyond the daily grind and the constant drive to expand. She had built a successful business, but what about the impact she wanted to leave on the world? What about the legacy she would create? It was a thought that had been nagging at her for weeks, and she knew it was time to confront it. One afternoon, as the team gathered for a celebratory meeting after another successful quarter, the waitress-turned-leader stood up, looking at the faces of those who had supported her along the way. They had become more than just colleagues, they had become her family. "I want to thank all of you for everything you've done," she began, her voice steady, but a hint of emotion creeping in. "We've accomplished so much together, and I couldn't be prouder of what we've built. But I've been doing a lot of thinking lately, and I've realized something. I've spent so much time focusing on the success of the company, on growth, and on expansion. And while that's important, I've come to understand that there's more to this journey. It's about what we stand for, and the kind of legacy we leave behind. We're not just building a business. We're building a community, a purpose." Her words hung in the air for a moment, and as she looked around the room, she saw the nods of understanding, the faces of people who shared her vision. She could see it now, clearer than ever. The company wasn't just about profit margins or industry recognition, it was about creating something that would last, something that would inspire others to make a positive impact on the world. She continued, her voice more confident now, strengthened by her realization. "We've built something great, but I want us to go further. I want to make sure that the work we do, the impact we make, is something that resonates beyond these walls. We have the opportunity to change lives, to leave a mark on the world that goes beyond our success. I want to create a legacy that inspires others to lead with integrity, to empower those around them, and to always strive for something greater than just profit." The room was silent, the weight of her words sinking in. The team had always known they were working toward something special, but hearing their leader articulate this vision made them feel connected to something much bigger than themselves. The waitress-turned-leader looked around, her heart swelling with pride. This was what it was all about. The vision wasn't just about business growth, it was about creating a positive, lasting change. "I know it won't be easy," she continued, her voice unwavering. "There will be challenges ahead, and there will be moments where we have to make difficult choices. But I believe in this team, and I believe in what we can accomplish when we come together with purpose and heart. We have the power to inspire, to create change, and to make a difference." As she finished speaking, the room erupted into applause. The sense of unity, purpose, and excitement in the air was palpable. It wasn't just about hitting the next milestone anymore, it was about building something that would last. That evening, as the waitress-turned-leader walked back to her office, a sense of calm washed over her. She had found what she was looking for, a deeper purpose, a vision that transcended business success. She had always been driven by the desire to prove herself, to show the world that she could make something of herself. But now, she understood that it wasn't just about personal achievement, it was about using her success to create something meaningful for others. As she sat at her desk, reflecting on the speech she had just given, the weight of the responsibility began to settle in. This wasn't just about her anymore. It was about the people she was leading, the community they were building, and the legacy they would leave behind. The challenge was no longer to grow the company, it was to ensure that as they grew, they stayed true to their purpose and values. She knew there would be difficult decisions ahead, but for the first time, she felt at peace with the path they were taking. It wasn't just about growth for the sake of growth. It was about growing with purpose, and leaving an impact that would be felt long after they were gone. The next day, she met with her leadership team, eager to share her newfound vision with them. "I've realized something important," she began. "It's not enough to grow the business. We need to make sure we're growing with integrity, that we're leaving behind a legacy that will inspire others to lead in the same way. We can't just focus on the bottom line. We need to create a company that stands for something bigger." Her team listened intently, their eyes wide with understanding. they were on the same page. Together, they had built something great, and now they were ready to take it to the next level, not just for the company, but for the world. And so, with the same determination that had fueled their success, they set out on a new mission, to build not just a successful business, but a lasting legacy of positive change. It was a journey that would challenge them in ways they hadn't anticipated, but with the right people by her side, the waitress-turned-leader knew they could face whatever came next. With the company's new direction in mind, the waitress-turned-leader found herself energized by the shift in focus. The expansion was still underway, and growth continued, but now there was a deeper layer to the work they were doing. It was no longer just about the numbers, the bottom line, or even the competitive edge. It was about creating lasting value, fostering a culture that would outlast any trend, and ensuring that every person involved in the company knew they were part of something bigger than just a business. As the days went on, she saw that her team was fully on board with this new vision. They shared her passion for building something with purpose, and this shared goal gave them even more energy. The once pressing concerns of immediate success had now shifted into the long-term vision they were all working toward. However, the transition wasn't without its challenges. As they focused more on creating meaningful work and establishing a lasting legacy, the pressure to maintain that level of responsibility started to take its toll on the waitress-turned-leader. The more she invested in her team, the more she realized how much was still expected of her. The responsibility was immense. She wasn't just leading a company, she was now guiding a movement, a shift in mindset that was reaching far beyond the walls of the office. One afternoon, after a particularly taxing series of meetings, she found herself sitting at her desk, looking out at the bustling city below. Despite the success, there was an underlying exhaustion that she couldn't ignore. Her personal life had taken a backseat to the demands of the company, and she hadn't taken time for herself in what seemed like ages. The thought lingered in her mind, and the more she reflected, the more she realized that to be the leader she wanted to be for her team, she had to take care of herself first. It was a difficult realization, but it was one she knew she couldn't ignore. That evening, after another long day of work, she reached out to Sarah, her trusted colleague and one of the leaders she had mentored. Sarah had become like family, and she was the one person who knew the challenges the waitress-turned-leader had been facing. "Can we talk?" the waitress-turned-leader texted. Sarah replied almost immediately, "Of course, I'll be there in an hour." When Sarah arrived at the office, she found her colleague deep in thought, staring at a collection of documents that seemed to represent the weight of the world. She sat down quietly across from her. "What's going on?" Sarah asked gently. The waitress-turned-leader exhaled deeply, leaning back in her chair. "I think I've lost sight of something important," she admitted. "I've been so focused on the work and the company, on building something that lasts, that I've forgotten to take care of myself. I've been pushing too hard, and I'm not sure how much longer I can keep this up." Sarah listened intently, nodding with understanding. "I've seen it," she said. "You've been carrying so much for so long, and I think the pressure has been building up. But you're not alone in this. You've built an amazing team that can help shoulder the load." The waitress-turned-leader smiled faintly but shook her head. "I know that. I've created a team that is more than capable of carrying the weight, but I've had this feeling for so long that I need to keep pushing, to keep proving myself. But I can't keep going at this pace. I need to find balance." Sarah smiled warmly, her eyes filled with empathy. "You've proven yourself in more ways than anyone could have imagined. The company is thriving, and you've built something amazing. But you don't have to do it all yourself. You've empowered all of us, and we're here to support you. You don't have to carry the weight alone." The waitress-turned-leader sat in silence for a moment, allowing Sarah's words to sink in. She had spent so much of her journey proving her worth, believing that to be a successful leader meant doing it all on her own. But now, she understood that true leadership was about empowering others to rise up, and it was time for her to practice that in her own life. "I've been afraid of letting go," she confessed. "Afraid that if I do, I'll lose control of everything I've worked so hard to build. But I see now that holding on so tightly isn't serving me or the company." Sarah nodded. "Sometimes, letting go is the hardest thing to do. But it's also the most important. You've built something great, and it's time to let it grow on its own." Trust your team. Trust yourself. The waitress-turned-leader smiled, feeling a sense of relief she hadn't felt in weeks. I'm going to take the time I need, she said, her voice stronger now. I'm going to delegate more, focus on the long-term vision, and give my team the space to shine. The next few days were a turning point for the waitress-turned-leader. She started delegating more, taking a step back from the day-to-day operations, and focusing on mentoring her team. For the first time in a long while, she took some time for herself, spending evenings at home, reconnecting with friends, and enjoying the things she had once set aside. The results were immediate. Her team thrived without her constant oversight, and the company continued to grow. She had given them the trust and autonomy they needed to excel, and they had risen to the challenge. The waitress-turned-leader realized that the key to sustaining the company's success was not in doing everything herself, but in creating an environment where everyone could lead, grow, and succeed together. With a newfound sense of balance and purpose, she moved forward with a clear mind and a strengthened heart. She had learned the hard way that leadership wasn't just about pushing for success, it was about trusting others, building strong relationships, and most importantly, taking care of herself so that she could continue to lead with integrity and vision. As the months passed, the waitress-turned-leader found herself in a place she had once dreamed of, satisfied, yet always hungry for growth and deeper meaning. The company was thriving, not just because of the innovative solutions they provided or the financial success they achieved, but because it had become a place that resonated with the values she had always held close: integrity, trust, and a commitment to making a positive impact on the world. The shift in her leadership style had brought about an evolution within the company. The team was more engaged, the culture was stronger than ever, and the business continued to expand in ways that were aligned with their mission. The company's growth wasn't just in terms of profit, it was a growth of purpose. The waitress-turned-leader was no longer a young woman striving to prove herself, she had become a visionary, someone who had successfully blended ambition with compassion. But with this success came a new challenge: sustaining the values that had shaped the company in the first place, while continuing to expand and innovate. It was a delicate balance, and every decision felt weighty. Yet, despite the pressure, she had learned to trust her instincts, and, most importantly, the people who were by her side every step of the way. One afternoon, as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting a warm glow over the city, the waitress-turned-leader stood on the balcony of the company's new headquarters, reflecting on how far they had come. It seemed like a lifetime ago when she had been that young waitress, unsure of her place in the world. Now, she was overseeing a team that had achieved something extraordinary, an achievement built on a foundation of collaboration, respect, and a shared vision. The challenges they had faced along the way were many, but each one had taught her something invaluable. She had learned that leadership wasn't about taking control of everything, it was about empowering others to step up and take ownership. It wasn't about having all the answers, it was about having the courage to admit when she didn't, and to trust that the right solutions would come from the collective wisdom of the team. She smiled softly to herself, realizing that, in the end, it wasn't just the company that had changed. She had changed too. She had become the kind of leader who could inspire others to reach their full potential, not by telling them what to do, but by guiding them toward finding their own path. Just then, her phone buzzed, snapping her out of her thoughts. It was a message from Sarah, one of the first people she had mentored, and now one of the company's top leaders. "The team is ready for the next step," Sarah's message read. "We've all been working toward this, and I believe it's time to take the leap." The waitress-turned-leader looked at the message for a moment before typing her response. "I believe in all of you. Let's make it happen." It was a moment of clarity. They had come so far, but the journey was far from over. This was the next phase, the one where they would continue to innovate, to challenge the status quo, and to make an even greater impact. But now, it wasn't just about pushing the company forward, it was about setting an example for others to follow, about creating a blueprint for success that was built on values, integrity, and the belief that success should always be shared. As the waitress-turned-leader sat back in her chair, she felt a sense of fulfillment. They had done it. They had created a company that was more than just a business, it was a force for good, a place where people could come together, grow, and make a difference. And as she thought about the legacy she had built, she realized that it wasn't about the awards, the recognition, or the accolades. It was about the people she had helped along the way, the lives she had touched, and the positive change she had contributed to the world. She had learned that leadership wasn't about the destination, it was about the journey. It was about helping others grow, empowering them to be their best selves, and leaving behind a legacy that would inspire future generations to do the same. The waitress-turned-leader stood up, looking out over the city once more. There was still much work to be done, but she knew now that whatever came next, she was ready. She had found her purpose, her place in the world, and the knowledge that leadership wasn't just a role, it was a responsibility. The next chapter would be as challenging as the first, but with the right people by her side, she knew that they could accomplish anything. As she closed the door to her office and walked out into the bustling halls of the company, she felt a sense of pride and fulfillment. She had built something that would last, something that would continue to grow and inspire long after she had stepped away. And that, more than anything, was her true legacy.